Conflict. Does the very word itself bring about anxiety, or are you someone who's like, yes, let's go for it? That's what we're going to talk about on today's episode. Welcome back to the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris. Before we dive into today's episode, click here to subscribe, hit that thumbs up, ring that bell, share this episode so you're notified each week when we post new content. Today, we're going to talk about conflict. How many of you have some kind of conflict going on in at least one or more relationship, right? We all have it. Conflict is actually a very normal part of communication. It's a normal part of relationships. I've done a previous episode on productive conflict, and I talk about all the areas of conflict as far as really learning how to listen and suspending judgment and to, really seek to understand the other person before you're understood and to stay curious. And I would encourage you, go back and listen to that episode because there's some great content there. But I really want to talk about DISC styles and how each of the 4 styles really interact and approach conflict and kind of the goal of each style in terms of conflict. Obviously, the goal would be collaboration, that we could all get in a place where we're flexing and we're really leaning into curiosity and collaboration. But our tendencies tend to be these preferences that we lean to that aren't always the most collaborative approach. So let's talk about each style. Remember, the dominant individual is someone who is assertive, they're fast-paced, they want results. And in conflict, they want to win, actually. They really create, and it's not a win-win. That's Stephen Covey's, I think, 3rd habit. He goes into that win-win scenario, but in the D, real, strong, dominant, direct approach to conflict, typically it's I'm going to win and you're probably going to lose. In fact, the D style is extremely competitive. And in conflict, that assertiveness gets even stronger. They're asserting themselves with lots of logic and lots of just bullet points, high-level things, kind of creating this win-lose situation. They become very rigid and unbending if they're not self-aware and leaning into style flexibility, okay? So that's the direct approach to conflict, is one where they want to win. It's all about victory. That's the goal in a conflict situation. Where the I style, that influential person, that persuasive individual who's also assertive, but rather than focused on tasks, you're all about people and relationships. And the goal, if you will, of conflict for the high I is to be heard. You want to express yourself. You want to talk. That needs-driven behavior to talk is what the high I is all about. It's just acknowledgement. They want to be heard. Would you acknowledge all the things that I am feeling, all the things that I am communicating? And typically in conflict for a high I who, again, is not very self-aware, not really staying curious and going at things in a collaborative way, they can tend to gloss over the initial conflict and really keep things light, make jokes, bring their sense of humor, kind of glossing over things, but then all of a sudden they can go straight for the jugular and they can know exactly where to hit you, where it hurts. And they usually go at something in a real personal way. And it's just like, that hurt. That felt really hard. That's classic I behavior in those conflict settings. Again, if you're not self-aware. If you're self-aware and you realize, okay, that's my tendency. I want to talk about this. I just want to be heard and acknowledged. I want to assert myself. I want to talk about my feelings. And now, okay, that was wrong. And now I'm going to just go right to the core of things. But if you're self-aware, you can stay curious, stay compassionate, stay in that place of listening so that you can be collaborative. So that's the high I. influential style. Now let's talk about the S style. So these are our less assertive individuals. Remember, we take more time to process information. We're more steady, stable, focused on relationships. So that individual in the realm of conflict, that accommodation, that needs-driven behavior to accommodate is all there, and they really want to comply with kind of the things that are happening, and their goal is to bring about harmony. They're the ones that are really trying to keep the peace. They're trying to bring about harmony. They're trying to accommodate. They are really listening more than the other two styles that I've already mentioned. They stay in that place of staying curious, but they can be kind of simmering beneath the surface, and they can get their feelings hurt really easily and can start to accommodate and maybe even give in at times when they really should possibly stand their ground and say, absolutely no, kind of setting some boundaries, because the D's and the I's, again, are so assertive. The S style can tend to suppress things. And so being able to stand your ground in a healthy way, again, staying curious, listening, don't be a pushover, and then saying the things that need to be said instead of simmering beneath the surface, and then later things can become really explosive. So saying what you think and feel can be really helpful in conflict situations. Now, the last style I want to talk about is that conscientious, precise C style. So that individual is also less assertive, taking more time to process information. They're all about the rules and procedures, and they tend to also focus on logic, not necessarily feelings. The I and the S, they're talking a lot about their feelings, where the D and the C style, it's all about logic. Let's talk about what? I don't care how you feel. Let's talk about the actual things that are bringing about this conflict. And then the C style can tend to withdraw. They can tend to pull back. Their goal is justice. They really want to fight for things from this justice perspective. And you will see this style when they're really passionate about something. Instead of avoiding it, which might be their natural tendency, they go at it very confrontational because they do want justice, and they want to really focus on the rules and the procedures and that kind of thing. Now, this style, of all four styles, you can see some of that passive aggressiveness in the C style, because they want to withdraw, but then if they have this sense of justice, then they can want to push back in, but they can do it in a passive aggressive way. So again, self-awareness is where the key to all of these styles really lies, because no matter where you are, no matter if you fall in, maybe two or three of these, or maybe one is kind of your go-to in conflict, if we can stay curious, seek first to understand the other person, and before we, have to be understood, and really listen, learning to listen, stay open, show compassion like you would want to receive, that in that situation can be such a key in bringing about collaboration, instead of creating, this win-lose situation, or just glossing over things and being expressive and hurt, or kind of withdrawing, or being passive aggressive, because those are the unhealthy places that we can all go. We all have unhealthy tendencies that we can go to. But if we are self-aware and we're really understanding communication and where we're coming from, then the goal is to be collaborative and to really approach this in a way that's productive, so that we're able to express our points in a very clear way, because remember, clarity is all about kindness. And so if we're clear in communication, it's showing kindness to the other person, listening, staying open, being able to communicate in those ways can really be helpful. So I hope you've learned a little bit about maybe your tendencies, your go-tos in conflict situations, and being able to be open, staying curious, staying in compassion, so that you can bring about that collaboration. That's really the goal. So I hope you've learned something today. Join me next week because we're going to talk about style flexibility. If you enjoyed this episode and would like more information on emotional intelligence, behavioral styles, or communication, I'd love for you to click here to watch more episodes. And we'd also love for you to click here to subscribe so you're notified each week when we post more content.